Welcome to Call Your Hits, a Storm Riders Airsoft podcast.
How's it going, everyone? Long time no see.
Yeah, it's been a while. I've got Pat back in the studio with me. It's Pat is in end of year purgatory, where time is extremely busy and valuable.
Man, the
Uh,
last couple of weeks of school for a teacher are, people are like, hey, can you do stuff? No.
oh, and I can't even do the stuff I'm supposed to do.
Like,
So,
man,
yeah.
it's a busy time.
But I'm glad we were able to get you to have a chat. It's been I thought today we'd basically just do a bit of a hodgepodge of like what's been going on, what's upcoming for us in Airsoft, and some of our like just some thoughts that were bouncing around. Before we get
And I
into
said,
it,
that sounds like something that's not marking.
yeah, yeah, I'm going to usurp your time for like 45 minutes an hour,
thank
so
God.
we can decompress from that. Before we get into the meat and potatoes of the episode, so to speak, in just under a month, on July 13th, there will be a Storm Riders Foreign Legion meetup in Belgium, in Europe. So myself and several other of our community members from obviously Belgium, but also from Slovenia, from Germany, as well as some from the United States, as far as I'm aware, are going to be meeting at Fort Knox Airsoft, which is an old World War One fort.
That's wicked.
That's where our community member Tullen plays. And so he's graciously basically set us up for understanding what we need to do and what we need to prepare for and stuff. And so we're really, really excited for that. I think it's going to be super cool to do an actual Storm Riders Foreign Legion meetup. I know that Bench and Tullen and Ambo had met before. But I think, this time I'm going to be bringing patches and we're going to make a whole deal of it, which is going to be great. It's in the middle of my personal family vacation, so I won't be doing too much Airsoft, but I've got a day pass to go and meet with everyone and have a good time. So I'm very excited. If you're in the community, yeah, if you're in the community listening to this and something that sounds appealing to you, definitely, let us know on the Discord. We can add you to the group chat and figure out any logistics that need to be figured out. Obviously, I can tell you right now, I'm not traveling with any replicas or any gear or anything. I'm taking the absolute bare minimum because for the rest of my trip, I'll be spending 2 weeks in Europe on just basically a backpack. So I want to keep the space at a minimum. But regardless, very, very exciting. And so again, it's on July 13th and just less than a month. Super excited. So if this sounds appealing to you, make sure to let us know on the Discord, and we'll add you to the group chat. But yeah, so meat and potatoes of this episode. So I thought today we'd talk a little bit about what Airsoft has looked like for the last little while for us, which, spoiler alert for Pat, has been mostly looked like marking and not much Airsoft. But also talking about, what are some of our plans are and some of our experiences. And then I'm really, really excited to talk about our next big event happening in August, Operation Silent Resolve, which I'll get to a little bit later. But yeah, so when we last left our heroes, Pat was still struggling to get his M249 up and running, which continues to be a bit of a bummer to this date, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not stressed about it in the sense that like everything is working other than the box mag, which isn't. And the folks at Bullcraft have been very cool, and we're just like, yeah, send it back to us, and we'll fix it and send it back to you, no cost other than shipping. But the tariff situation means that they won't get dinged when I send it to them, but when they send it back to me, I may be charged upwards of twice the cost of the box mag. I recently had a package that I sent back come in via UPS with like $400 worth of Warhammer models in it from the States that shouldn't have been tariffed or dutied or anything. And they wanted $560 on it, which was like, what?
It does make ordering Airsoft, and I mean other stuff too, right? But like we're talking about Airsoft in particular, it does make it really untenable if that supply chain is going through the US, right? And
Yeah,
we see that with our like retailers as well, right? I mean,
Yeah, totally. Like
they're not immune to that. Yeah.
it is a whole thing for everyone. So my situation as far as the LMG goes is I don't think there is one for this season, or until that situation figures itself out more.
Hmm.
You know, in the like median term, I guess if this continues indefinitely enough, um, I'll either suck it up or I'll buy the nozzle that I need to move the parts into an AK and the
Yeah.
box mag and just run it as a different kind of LMG.
Why is it that it's this? 'Cause you have to refresh my memory. Like, why is it this box mag in particular?
Because it works and the other ones don't. I mean, it currently doesn't work.
Right. Right.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
like, so essentially, the 249 box mags slash every other one really are like that are for 249s, and most NATO machine guns, I guess, are shite. um, so basically, the mechanism that actually feeds the rounds is not very robust. And for the uh, oomph that the HPA engine puts in, it's especially inadequate. So, like, I could buy if we're talking about the buying a new donor bodying than just throwing up my hands with the 249, which, like I said, I only need at all. I will only be thinking about doing if like if I can't play with it at all this season because of the tariff situation being like, oh yeah, your new box, like repairing your box mag will cost $600. Then at that point, I will look at buying a new body and figuring something out, I guess. You know, not in a cranky way, just in a sort of like,
Yeah. It's like practicality too. Like, you eventually would like to have an SSW,
yeah,
right?
exactly,
So
right. And like, I
yeah.
have one. It just like I could feed it on Stanag mags. That's just not super great.
Yeah, and specifically for the op that I designed later, that's specifically disallowed,
Yeah.
right?
So yeah,
Not that I
I
did that as a big fu to you in particular, but had I
yeah
known, maybe
yeah.
I like. Anyways, regardless, it's not
Past Phil
important. But
probably didn't plan this to
yeah,
mess with current
definitely
Pat,
not.
right? Like, so yeah, that's bullshit. But like, here we are. Um, I'm like, I might try bumming a box mag from Josh because he has a couple of like not as expensive and fancy ones, but like if we can get one of them feeding or something, that'd be okay. I'm as audibly, I'm hemming and hawing about it, right? Because like I could buy a stoner and put it all in the stoner, and then it's easier to get a mag that works for a stoner. Um, and like I think it really is partly just like the 249 design, like the Airsoft 249 is not new.
Yeah, and the one that you have in particular, if I'm not mistaken, is pretty old,
Oh yeah,
right?
totally. Like, so yeah, I've got some options in terms of like, I mean, like I could think about buying a Featherlight and putting because they run off of a different mag, and having that option. Really, I'm not planning this in the sense of like my airsoft budget for this year is sort of I'm trying to keep it on the smaller side. I don't need more guns. I have we're going to talk about this as we go, but like I have a permanent like $500 card at Flamingo that I want to buy, but that's not a right now bet kind of purchase.
Certainly, definitely
You
want to
know,
talk about Flamingo as well
oh
in a little
man,
bit,
totally.
but yeah.
So my current what time I've had to play with airsoft stuff has mostly been behind a keyboard. So I've been poking at like what I want to pick up, and thinking about stuff for games that we have planned later in the summer that we'll get to a little bit later in the episode. But the last the last thing I did was we did the season opener op, and then I came home and took my M27 apart and cleaned the HPA engine and lubed it and all that jazz because it was a little erratic, and I haven't had a chance to go test it, but it should be golden there now. Like I cleaned everything.
Yeah, and it brings back this point we've talked about so often. Like having lots of airsoft guns is fine and like in dandy, like you're collecting, it's great, whatever. But like when you have one replica that's just a nail driver, like your M27 is, it makes it like it kind of makes it hard to switch off of that unless the replica you're going for has some sort of like particular benefit. So in this case, yeah, SSW in a game where everyone else is semi-locked is an advantage, and I can see that. But like for a regular skirmish, right? Aside from the fun factor, you're like, yeah, I could go frustrate myself with the SSW, or I could just drive nails all day long with the M27, right?
Yeah, and I mean the situation where, like in a situation where the M249 is working like as it was at the end of last season before the box mag decided to stop working because, um, I would be delighted to just alternate between the two of them. I bought a second HPA regulator so that I could, right, like to just minimize the difficulty of switching between the two of them in an afternoon of play. Um, you know, Practically speaking, that's not the world I live in this summer, I guess, unless things change. So that's fine. I'm not too grumpy about it because realistically, it's like, oh, I have to fall back on this awesome rifle
Yeah,
that I built.
yeah. It's kind of hard to be mad at your backup
No,
gun being like so good. I
right?
have to tell you though, because we haven't had this conversation yet, but I ended up putting a Alpha Industries like I can't remember Silent Industries Alpha hop up in my replica, and I put it in with a Maple Leaf Super Macaron hop up rubber, removing the R hop patch entirely and all this kind of
Yep,
stuff.
that makes sense. I mean, that's
It is awesome. It
sweet.
is so good. I was like at the last game that we played on Saturday was kind of frustrating because I had multiple instances where like up close like I failed to hit Jason Fong like 3 times in a row from like 25 feet away, and I should have been blasting him, but for some reason my BB's never connected with him. Fair enough, whatever. But I was making shots 120, 150 feet with no issue whatsoever,
Awesome.
like, and very very consistent. So all of my like consistency issues and like velocity issues, all of those have been resolved seemingly by this new hop up unit and the new hop up rubber. So
Is
very 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 glad about that. I'm back in a position where I don't have to think about my replica in terms of performance. Like I put my dot where I want it, and unless you're Jason Fong apparently, I'm gonna hit you with, if I get the drop on you type
yeah,
situation. So
that's good stuff. Like,
it's super cool. Like I'm glad because that was a very expensive hop up unit because it's made in Europe, and I think Andy's had it for like 100 and some stupid amount of money. But it
but I
was
mean,
more expensive than the Max hop up, but the performance it is night and day, right?
hey, I
It's
mean,
just
as long as it
really
does
really
what we
strong.
need it to,
Yeah,
yeah. So I need to get out. I need to go test my M27 because it was being a little wonk. But that, like I said, that I cleaned the barrel and checked
well, the
everything
school
over.
year needs
So
to end first, and once that happens, then we
yeah,
can do the other
yeah,
thing.
it's hard to find energy to go play airsoft when you're working as much as I am and sleeping as little. um,
Definitely.
you know,
One thing to definitely get excited about, though, we talked about a little bit, is the flamingos, the flamingo
yes,
launchables and the grenades. I went and I tested because the weather has been nice enough now in Newfoundland that it's warm enough that I feel good about reliably testing like the green gas and the black gas that
the
I'm
data is now
using.
actually reasonable.
Yeah, because like when it's under like 10 degrees, when it's like 7 or 8 degrees, it's kind of hard to imagine what that performance is going to look like. But now I've had the chance of using both of the shower shells as well as the launchables on black gas, and the performance is quite good in terms of range, in terms of velocity. It's also the coolness factor. I mean, like we were in the safe zone, and people saw me loading the launcher with the flamingo with the actual projectile in it, and I didn't have any primer in it. It was just the like the launchable with the little
The
yellow
foam
cap or
ball.
whatever. Yeah. And they're like, "Oh, so what does that shoot BBs?" I'm like, "No, it shoots a projectile." They're like, "What?" I was like, "Yeah," and I just flicked it off safe. And I'm in the safe zone, but I don't my air is not connected. It's just this thing, and so I just launch it over the netting, and they're like, "Whoa!" It's like, yeah, yeah. Like, is it useful? Like, not in our context, not super useful. One thing, and this is feedback I gave them, and I'm doing a video about the launchables in particular because I did have a chance to test them a bit more robustly. Is that
Sweet.
within like 25 to 50 feet, like roughly straight on, the projectile does fire straight. And so what that means is the chance that you're actually going to hit the front of it and set off the primer is quite high. Especially with the new foam tips that they have that are a lot squishier.
Hmm.
Really good success with those. With the previous ones, it's like 1 in 3 type of situation, which is not ideal. The challenge that happens is that the longer range that you shoot, it becomes even more of a problem because once at some point, like the barrel imparts spin on the projectile, which helps it stay oriented, but very quickly that stops to spin, and then the projectile just starts to tumble. And then once that happens, it's sort of like, is it going to land in the right orientation or not? And that's not a new or unique problem to flamingos. That's a problem with most launchables.
Yeah, I mean that's
But
a
yeah,
physics.
well, yeah, exactly. And but if you just like put it in the barrel and then assume that, well, it's rifled, so it's gonna, like, you would be fine to assume that, oh well, it's just gonna carry on. But the reality is, even a bullet will do the same thing. Like, it's rifled, but after a certain amount of time, that bullet just starts to tumble, right?
Yeah, and like it's
Relative aerodynamics being what they are, that takes a lot longer for a bullet than this like piece of plastic that you're just launching through the
yeah, I
air,
mean
right?
the bullet's getting more spin from the rifling and also going much faster,
Yeah, the
right?
amount of kinetic
Like
energy it's carrying is huge, right? So regardless, I think it was pretty effective. And when they do go off, like, it's a loud enough bang, but it doesn't like fragment or whatever. The thing breaks apart, but it doesn't explode. So I was pretty thrilled
oh, that's good.
overall when I did get a good explosion. And the chalk rounds are awesome. Like, they're just super fun. The only thing I will say about the chalk rounds is, because they're so much lighter, they do lose their kinetic energy much faster. And so as a consequence, the range that you get on them is much, much lower comparatively. But I was having no trouble shooting the projectiles out past 150 feet at like a 45-degree angle, just like this, and just shooting it straight out. And that was like with the wind and stuff, which of course Newfoundland, we always have wind. Your mileage may vary in different parts of the world. But yeah, I was really thrilled, and just, it's hard to beat the fun. I mean, we talked about this, I think, the last time we talked about the 203. Like, it's so much fun,
I mean
right?
the like utility notwithstanding, because like they're not um a perfect tool. Like even if you have the substantial amount of money to drop on like um
Yeah,
the
tag in
yeah,
or
like the
whatever.
really
Yeah,
like Tagin's launcher and Tagin's HPA stuff and all of their madness, which, don't get me wrong, like is really cool stuff. I'm not denigrating it at all. It's just also quite pricey.
hmm
You know, I think you're still looking at a thing that does a bunch of neat stuff and adds a lot to like MILSIM scenario play, because hey, okay, so if I can lob a chalk round 150 feet, then I can lob a chalk round at a technical 150 feet away, right?
yeah, for sure, exactly
Um,
right.
you know, there's stuff you can do with that in terms of simulation that's really cool and allows you to differentiate the role of the guy carrying the grenade launcher versus just a rifleman. Um, in terms of practicality, like I probably think that like between the Flamingo launchables and the newer like the Ace Tech frag
The Ace
rounds,
Hive shells that we
yeah,
have, yeah.
like um, that it's gotten to the point where I'd say they're definitely they add utility. Like it's not necessarily direct 1-to-1 best bang for your buck utility, but the sound of them firing is super just satisfying, right?
And
Um,
let's be clear, like, every single game that I've played this year that I've had the 203 shells, the Ace Hive ones in particular, I've gotten a kill with those
yeah,
shells. Like, the last game that I played, and like, I was on the road field that has a bit of a berm, and I could see players coming on the other side, but they weren't like adjacent to the berm. They were like, but they were in the, I guess, in the defil, like they were covered, right? And I couldn't get a clean shot at them. And I know that I'm not going to be able to lob my BBs at them because I'm, within 40 feet. But guess what can? My 203, right? And so, did I get my angle perfect? No. Most of them flew over Matt, but two of them hit him. Perfect,
It'll do.
right?
Right.
Or from the top of the old two-story on the banister, there's people down in the swamp, right? And I can just hose a particular like large cylinder area
Yeah, it's
and get a couple of guys that way,
um,
right?
in the same way as the 249. Right? There's a certain value to bad guy be gone.
For sure. Yeah, so it's definitely something that's a lot of fun, and I'm with the flamingos in particular. I think one of the things that the reason that like I think that, and we've talked about this before, but like, are their products perfect? No, definitely they are not. But they're also still in active development. So anytime there are issues with them, we've been able, I've been able to talk to either Tony or Sed or Mac and say, hey, this is the issue I'm having. This is like the modes of failure. This happened recently, actually, with some of the 209 grenades, which the base plate actually flew out when the 209 went off, and the counterweight flew out because what ended up happening is the threading on it delaminated, and it just
Oh, yep.
basically, which is not supposed to happen.
That's
Yes,
not
it's
working as
not
intended.
right.
Uh,
And so I sent them pictures of that, and they were like, "Okay, yeah, we understand what happened now. We'll, send you a replacement. Like that's not, and like to be clear, like that's not the issue. But they take that feedback and they make changes to their product based on what their users are telling them, which I think is critical
yeah, I
when you
mean,
have a product that's still like in active development,
yeah,
right?
I mean, like so far, I've probably set them off like 4 or 5 times, 6, 7 times each. I'm super happy with their grenades. I'm super impressed with the uh, launchables from the 203. Like they're not, um, I I don't think we're going to be the guys making like videos of tagging either like firing it 300 feet and going yeah
Yeah,
perfect
definitely.
shot right. Yes, those videos exist. Yes, I've watched them. Yes, I've gone. Um, you know, um, at this point, after testing the flamingo ones, I'm like having not run but encountered some of the tag-in ones and a couple of other variations. Like I think they're probably all on about the same vector. Um, I think the tag-in guys have got their packaging and their branding and like their form factor really on. They're really pretty. um, and I think they work great for what they're for. Um, I'm not sure they work enough better than what I've got already, plus the flamingo stuff, for me to spend 2 grand on them.
And that's
Right?
that's the
Like,
sticking point, right? Like even if we accept that the tag-ins are a superior product, which I'm not, like I don't have the experience to be able to say that. But even let's say we did say that, like, is it $2,000 better? Like, especially in Canada right now with the prices of things the way that they are,
yeah,
like
yeah.
we can
Like,
get like a tag-in, excuse me, a flamingo shell, launching shell for like $60, right? Uh, that's hard to it's hard to disagree with. Even like a tag-in shell, like they're standalone shells that take either HPA or some take CO2, even straight CO2, so 1500 psi, right? Even those shells are like hundreds of dollars,
and
right?
like, for my money, and full disclosure, I have not used their HPA or CO2 shells like the newer ones. But for my money, for our use case,
Definitely
um,
agree. Yeah.
I think most of the time that I am running a launchable and using it for our use case, I won't need 50 feet more range more than I'm able to move up 50 feet.
Yeah, well, I mean, and especially with tagging, like you're not talking 50 feet, you're talking like 50 meters, 100 meters, 200 meters,
Sure.
right? But like for our field is not getting any bigger. Well,
But,
maybe the
you know,
up after,
but
but like we'll
also
talk about
like,
that.
even in the context where I had double the field to use the thing on, in Canada, I can only get their chalk rounds, right? And their like their shotgun shell kind
Yeah,
of
the BBs, yeah.
BBs with no projectiles. Just, so for the shotgun shell, I don't want to shoot that at someone at 1500 psi from close range.
Yeah.
So I'll stick with the Ace Hive ones for that. Thanks. And like I'm sure there are people who've used them. And I'm sure there are people who tell me, "Oh, it's completely fine." It's not for me. You know, the hey, shoot 100 rounds that away, pretty good in a cloud that goes a really long. Yeah, okay, I can kind of see the appeal, but for me, last time I looked before I pay tax and shipping on that, that's like $10 a trigger pull plus a $200 shell. And my experience with, and it's possible that Taggin has solved these problems. My experience previously with CO2 shells has been that also I'm going to need a rebuild kit every couple of games.
Yeah, because you build seals or whatever.
Yeah, so like my cost per trigger pull starts to be, I think about whether or not this is a $25 problem. Or I can spend, the same amount of money and get like 30 shots out of a chalk round and 2 shells to shoot it from. I think probably that's the pick Pat makes.
Yeah, agree.
And like, don't get me wrong. Fully, if you were like, "Hey Pat, we're covering all of your launchables and grenades and whatever. Like, we will, here's $5,000. Go burn it on things to shoot out of an airsoft grenade launcher." I'd still buy a pile of flamingo stuff.
Yeah, I agree. And
not
like
that I wouldn't
thing...
also buy some of the tag-in stuff, but like, a 10 to 12 round bandolier full of the flamingo one sounds pretty funny.
Yeah, well, and
right?
that's what I was going to talk about. Like, one thing I've really, especially since started like picking up the flamingos and like with the grenades and the launchables and everything else, one of the things that I've really felt is the whole idea of like two is one and one is none, because every single game I'm shooting both of my Ace Hive shells. I find a situation where it's like, this is a good use for this right now, and I shoot it. And then I'm like, I still have another one, and that one gets used too. Whereas I feel like and I've experienced this many times before, like I only have one, so I'm not going to use it now. It's like that we've talked about this, given this example. Is that like that super health potion you keep for the boss, but you never use it because you might need it some other time, right? And so like I have like 2 or 3 of the flamingo like throwing grenades, and then I've got the Ace Hive shells, but I've only got one of the flamingo launchable one. So I'm like, oh, I got to keep that one, right? So every single game I'm using both of the Ace Hives, but somehow the flamingo one, and also I mean it's like, what am I going to use it, when am I going to throw it at someone, right? Like, so that's certainly been a bit eye-opening, but I think I've been really able now to test those launchables and really feel like I can see them adding a lot of value to our game based on how they perform, but not, I think, in a necessarily like direct impact kind of way, but more like it adds a lot to the ambiance to see stuff flying around that's not dangerous.
Totally.
Right?
And
If I beam someone with one of those at 150 feet, like they're going to be surprised, but I don't think they're going to be hurt. Do you know what I mean?
Totally. You'll get a out of it, I suspect. But like,
Or like, what the heck?
the couple of times we've played with the chalk rounds that I've been around, like I can totally see that being a sort of, if that hits you, within 5 feet of you, call yourself out, 10 feet of you, maybe, kind of thing. And independent of that, just the sheer hilarity of launching them in the direction of people and watching people be like, the hell?
Yeah,
is
that
actually...
happened last. It happened last game. Like I fired because I put pink. I have pink cornstarch, or like it's like holly powder, like the Hindu festival powder. So it's food safe. So if you get it in your mouth or you breathe it in, it's totally fine. But I was behind like the oil tank on the road game, and I fired that shell out, and the black gas is so powerful that basically initially I think it broke the back of it, and so I just put powder all over the place, just like pink powder came out of the muzzle of my 203 flying everywhere. And I can't remember who it was. Tanner was like, did you shoot that to like a smoke grenade or something? I'm like, no, that's the chalk round. It basically vaporized. So I think if I'm going to be shooting the chalk rounds, I need a bit more testing, but I'm going to be using green gas instead of the black gas because the pressure might be a little too much.
Which is fine. Like that saves you money anyway, right? Like ultimately.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's one of these things where uh airsoft definitely is a place where silly fun should be welcome. And I
Agree.
feel like these give us a lot of options for both silly fun and like decent scenario stuff, right? Even um I not that I'm currently organizing either of the next scenario games, which is weird. I don't mind, it's just unusual.
Mhm.
um that's Phil's I really want to tell Pat about stuff I have planned for him face.
I'm going to in a second,
Well,
but
fair.
yeah.
But yeah, like just having a thing where you can be like, oh hey, Pat has a standalone grenade launcher, let's lock a couple of these in to a case with it and have that be an item in a game that people can take to do a mission objective where they have to shoot chalk rounds at something and hit it, is a cool thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Um, I want to talk about the event that we have upcoming. I want to take a brief detour and talk about the airsoft endurance race that we just did,
Yeah,
like an
totally.
obstacle course. So you weren't there for that. Unfortunately, the weather did not
I give
cooperate.
myself heat
So
exhaustion the day before.
yeah, we
I
we
couldn't
had
plan this shit.
many. Well, yeah, seriously, we had numerous people not show up on the day of because the weather was not super clement. Like it was raining and it was muggy, and so people whatever, decided to
Isn't
stay
it
home. We
supposed
had seven
isn't it
runners.
supposed to suck?
Yes, well, that's true, but hey, it is what it is. We had seven people complete it. It was a 500-meter course that we had set up around the old Redcliffe area, and it was the same, roughly the same course that we had last time, which involved carrying like a heavy item through like down a set of stairs on the trails, and then dumping it one place, and then crawling along on the an open area in the woods, and then doing some shooting from three different shooting stances and reloading, climbing up the hill, doing some more shooting, some more running up the hill, um, some reaction
Get
shooting,
your cardio in,
and
boys.
then yeah, and then finally we had basically like a rush through one of the buildings with a couple of targets inside, like figure 11 targets, and then run outside with the exercise I really like, which is a kettlebell throw. So you start at in one place, you pick up the kettlebell, you throw it, and then wherever it lands, you go to the kettlebell, you engage the target from there, you pick up the kettlebell, and you keep throwing it and engaging and throwing it and engaging until you cross the last line, at which point you sprint to the finish.
Or until your arms fall
Um,
off.
yeah, and so it was a really good showing. I think we had a lot of fun. We had all kinds of people show up. I think we had Toby, who's one of our oldest participants, who's 50 something. He was there with his son Edward,
My
and
man.
Edward, who's pretty young, and Ava, who's pretty young, and then Kirby, Sasha, myself. All kinds of different age ranges, experience levels, and it was just a good time. And at the end of the day, what I think is most important is you have people showing up to do something that's like airsoft adjacent basically, but it's all about just really pushing yourself and seeing like how hard you're really willing to go. So I was really thrilled. I completed my course much faster than the last time we did, but I mean, admittedly, that was 5 years ago, 5 years and like two ultra
I was gonna
marathons
say
ago
you've run
or
a couple of
whatever. But
kilometers
like,
since then. One or two.
um, but yeah, and at the end of the day, Kirby actually won by a few seconds. So, and only because and that's in addition to like Sasha, who did okay, except he shot the wrong target on the reaction target, so he had a time penalty. So sucks to suck, but that's the whole idea of the reaction, is we get you to shoot the right target when you're already tired. But what was really stood out to me is like people were having difficulty engaging some of the longer range targets, and that really ate into people's time. And when I got to those targets, I was getting first round hits, and I'm like, yeah, that's why I paid $150 or whatever for that hop up
The
unit.
sound of Phil's gun working how he wants it to.
Yeah, so that felt really good. Although I kept
5 years
snagging
later.
on the low crawl, we had set up flagging tape, like trail flagging tape, to crawl underneath, and I kept catching it in my regulator. So I have to find a better solution for that to prevent it from like popping up on my back. But that's a problem for future Phil. So I just want to take a quick detour. But
Totally. Wicked.
what I'm really excited about is our next event coming up, Operation Silent Resolve. So this is the first time that we're ever holding like a very serious MILSIM in the province. So this is going to be a 10-hour event. It is inspired by both the Stag Ops rule set, as well as the MILSIM West rule set. Um, I'm it's my partner in crime for this event is actually Chris Cathcart, Nomad One, who's a friend of the show. He's actually flying down to Newfoundland to help me run this event, which is super super cool.
Love this.
We're gonna do some really cool stuff with him aside from the event. He's gonna get the full Newfoundland experience, but what we are trying to ultimately provide is a real, as real as you can get it, within the confines of airsoft, obviously, light infantry experience. So I've spent a lot of time creating con op documents, which include everything from like your overall concept of operation, your phase lines, the map of the AO, the objectives, everything like enemies, most likely course of action, most deadly course of action, most dangerous course of action, like all this kind of stuff. And it's styled in what a con op is supposed to look like. So it's, all the wording is very technical, very military. All the symbols on the maps are all military. And so for people who have knowledge in that field, that should feel like a familiar document. And actually, that's feedback that I've gotten from people I've shown it to who said, oh, wow, that's actually like a real ConOps document. I was like, yep, that was the intent. Not that I've ever seen one, but thankfully I have people around me who know what they're supposed to look like. So
Use your resources.
That's one thing. And then the other thing that we've done with this event is we've created an event which is fully asymmetrical in what actually is going to happen, in that the teams aren't necessarily exactly balanced in the same way. They're not exactly balanced on the field necessarily, and they don't know what they're there to do, right? They know what they're there to do, but they don't know what the other team is there to do, right? So it's going to be a lot of trying to suss out what exactly is happening, responding to contact, combat patrols, setting up combat outposts, and then in addition to that, whatever fragos and anything else that come up throughout the day, as Chris and I decide to run you guys into the ground, basically. It's going to be like when I say that it's a serious MILSIM, some of the key concepts around this are like, if you show up late, you can't play, right? If you leave, you're done. You don't come back, right? You're gonna have to. There is no place to drop off your gear safely, so you're gonna have to carry it, or perhaps drop it off at like a patrol base or something in anticipation of a fight. But you're gonna have to come back and get it. You can't just leave it there. And if the enemy finds it, they can just take it because you shouldn't have left it there in the first place, right? So that's a lot of stuff. And then the other thing
feel
about
like familiar
this,
ideas.
yeah,
like not
and
in a critical way, just like, yeah, that makes sense. Challenging to implement, but like I look forward to it.
The other thing is that the area is huge. It's absolutely massive. So it's 1.8 kilometers east to west and 1.2 kilometers north to south. So roughly, if you do the math on like the acreage of that, it is approximately 100 times larger than Frontline.
Yikes.
And so as a consequence of this, though, we have to have very strict safety measures in place to make sure that people stay safe, nobody gets lost. There is no cell service in the area, so it's going to rely on like GPS, it's going to rely on radios. And so players, teams are going to have to roll together because, again, it's a light infantry simulation. There's not going to be any of this lone wolf business, right? Like if you're a DMR, congratulations, you've got a DMR, but you're not going to run around and do stuff by yourself. You're going to be the DMR to support your squad. Same with the SSWs. Like teams will work together either as a section or a squad or a fire team at the very minimum, right? You're never going to be alone doing different things.
Yeah, well, I mean,
so yeah, it's going to be serious.
We're going to be, relatively speaking, out in the bush, right? For here to, not like a huge distance from civilization, but like, a bit of a hike in. So
certainly,
so
yeah,
yeah, I have had getting a second radio on my to-do list. Like we talked about it last season. Excuse me. And like, that's on the to-do list. I don't feel like I need a longer range antenna for it particularly, but like maybe.
Well, I mean, I bought two, so
all right. Well,
yeah, I think there's a lot of considerations for an event like this because this is way bigger than Redcliffe. The space is way bigger than Redcliffe, and all of Redcliffe, from the lower base to the top base, like how we sometimes played. Like it's much larger than that space. And there's a variety of terrain. So there's bog, of course, because it's Newfoundland. There's woods. There's some hills. There's lakes, or not lakes certainly, but ponds, right? Some of which are like too deep to wade across, right? You're not like going in that. If you want to go for a swim, I mean, fill your boots, literally, because you're not like, if you go into this pond, like it's deeper than you are tall, right? So these are like, this is a real large AO. Like you're going to be able in certain areas, depending on how you set up your OPs and all this kind of stuff, you should be able to see the enemy moving at a range that you will never be able to engage them. Like they are 300, 400 meters away. And you're like, yep, there they are. What are you going to do about that? Right.
Yeah,
So,
keep doing what we're doing.
yeah. And then,
You know,
yeah.
so like it's going to be a lot more of a, um, you know, going to spend the day in the woods, kind of vibe relative to like a all day sort of like game at frontline where you're basically always shooting because there's no distance.
Yeah.
You know, for me, it's sort of leaning back to like my, you know, day hike camping stuff that I used to do and going, okay, so what do we need for that? Right. And then stapling the airsoft gear on top of it, which is going to be tiring. You know,
Yeah.
like no,
And so, I mean, it's
no two ways
a
about
10-hour
it. Like,
day.
yeah,
Yeah.
humping, you know, humping the M27 and my vest for a 10-hour day is uh, going to be tiring. You know, I was talking to Cal the other day about like probably there's stuff on our rigs we won't bother to carry, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know,
100%.
I certainly don't see any reason to carry a sidearm for that. I'm not running as a DMR, so I'm not going to have an MED. The field distances are such that, frankly, an MED is ridiculous anyway. Like, not in a safety, just in a like, I'm never gonna, it's not gonna come up.
If you're shooting at someone within like 50 feet, like you're just, at this AO, things have gone very wrong.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Like, so, you know, I'm either gonna pull the 249 off the rifle and just carry the 320, or I'm going to not carry the 320 and carry the 249. One of the two. I
The
haven't.
203, you mean, right?
Yeah, sorry. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So either I'm going to leave the grenade launcher on the M27, or I'm going to pull it off and just use the standalone one because that feels like it probably will be fine for this. That's going to be sort of a like, how do I want to carry things decision more so than a like visual decision, which a lot of the time is just like, yeah, which one's cooler? You know, like the 24 or the M the 203 on the M27 looks really cool. At frontline, I don't really care about the weight for 8 hours, 6 hours, 5 hours, whatever, right? Like,
Here you definitely
you know,
might.
for 10 hours of like tromping around in the woods, it may be that the best way to carry a grenade launcher is like strapped to the outside of my pack so that one of my squad mates can access and operate it if they need to, right? Like, especially given that even when I'm not running it as a DMR, the M27 is both relatively reachy and relatively accurized, and I've got the magnified optics. So, like, you know, at the end of the day, being able to post up with that longer, easier may be the right decision. And like, we haven't completely got that sorted, obviously, because this isn't till August, so I have some time to like do push-ups and think about it. Both of which I think are going to be necessary here. Right? Like, I need to work on my my physical fitness for this because otherwise it's going to suck a whole lot more.
Yeah. Get to the gym and just get on the Stairmaster,
Yeah,
and
right. You know,
just crank it out. But yeah, I think, you know, there's a bunch of that. But what I'm really excited for is also this sort of like the thought process that's going to have to go into this. So there's going to be situations where you're like, okay, we're here, we just observed the enemy at this particular location or whatever. Why would they be there? You know, I know what my objectives are. Why is my enemy in that position? What are they trying to achieve? Like, and your squad leaders and stuff are gonna do a lot of this, and that's because they're gonna be the basis for their tactical and strategic decisions. But like, that's not something that we've ever considered. Like, even at frontline, when you didn't know what the enemy's objective is, well, I don't know what it is, but guess what? I'm just gonna go and blast them.
yeah. In a
Right?
space the size of frontline, you know, um, the model we've used very successfully forever is, when in doubt, aggression serves a pretty solid function here.
Yeah, just
Um,
go hold ground,
you know,
right? Yeah.
in the context of like a space that's like, we're not going to be able to push the another team into a corner of it and keep them there. Um, we'll be lucky if we can find them. you know, like
Yeah, exactly right.
like if you um if you guys want to, you can functionally keep it so that we see each other but are never within effective range to engage. And like, I don't know what your plan is there, and obviously whatever it is, I trust you guys have like a cool, interesting experience. But I feel like even the bigger games which we are on at Redcliffe, which often had like half an hour, 45-minute intervals where no one was pulling a trigger, which was really cool in that it created a lot of tension of just like, where is the people? When am I going to get
Mhm.
shot? um, is likely to be, the more so in this case. So,
Most certainly. And so yeah, we do have secret plans, obviously, and like all this kind of stuff. But I think what it's gonna behoove everyone to think about like what they're carrying and how they're approaching this event. But I'm excited. I think you're right that I one of the things that I've really wanted to do, and when Chris and I were talking about this, was how can we make this as challenging as possible, right? Like the terrain is going to be challenging in and of itself, but we want to make sure that the event is like you're working for it, right? You're doing something and it's a challenge and it's something that you haven't done before. And you and I were even talking because I remember having a conversation with you because you're like you weren't sure if you wanted to do it or not. And I was saying to you like when are you going to get a chance to do something like this again?
yeah. Um,
And short of traveling to Red Roads or going to MILSIM West or Stag Ops or whatever, which again with the United States stuff is challenging for us currently. It's unlikely for us to experience for most people in our community to experience something of this sort of caliber.
like, the reality is, it's a good inducement for me to continue. And I've been doing okay in terms of the like working on the physical fitness stuff relative to where I was 6 months ago. So like, I'm happy with that. Not as happy as I could be, but like, um,
Progress is
yeah,
progress.
exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Um, this gives me some sort of momentum to keep being like, oh yeah, there's a thing over there. But also like, even if, like worst case scenario, I get there, I play for a couple hours. I'm absolutely like, I can't do this. I have to tap out. I drag my sorry carcass back to the car and just like fall asleep for 100 years. At least I tried it.
Mhm.
And like, don't get me wrong, that's not
Yeah.
my plan. Like, I don't plan to tap out. I'm a stubborn individual, as you are aware, But like, you pointed out that, yeah, like, when am I getting a chance to try this? Yeah, so let's do it, right? And if I love it,
Yeah.
awesome. And if I hate it, okay.
I think to be fair, there's going to be a lot of opportunity for people to rest and recover.
Yeah, like,
Um, Perhaps more so for you guys than the other team. I don't want to give too much away, but certainly, what I think ultimately am the most concerned about. I mean, yeah, I think some people are going to hate this, and I think that's fine because for you to figure out that you hate it, you have to at least do it,
totally.
right? Um, but I really hope that people actually take all of the like logistics and safety stuff seriously because, you know, the reality, this is something I've mentioned to a few people. I'm like, if you're in the woods and you're by yourself and you can't see anyone and you can't hear anyone and you can't reach anyone on the radio or your cell phone doesn't have signal, you're in danger,
Yeah, no, I mean, like,
right?
um, I once upon a time I was actually pretty okay at this stuff. Uh, Boy Scouts, as it turns out, is actually a great thing to do. And this is one of those like, okay, so I need to dig out my GPS and make sure I have a map of this area on it if I can figure that out.
We're gonna facilitate a lot of that stuff on the back end by giving maps to people like, hey, this is the GPX or whatever, like this
Great,
is what you should be
like,
looking at.
and
Yeah.
I'm not shocked that you have thought of that. But like, at a sort of baseline sort of level, like, physical map, compass, probably a good idea.
Yeah,
You know,
100%.
are we planning on being there till dusk? I think yes.
Yeah.
Flashlight, mandatory.
Mandatory,
you
yeah, that's
know.
on the mandatory categories. But also even stuff that seems as like stupid as like, so the AO that we're playing with, there is the main road, Maddox Cove Road, runs north to south, west of the AO, right? Which direction does the sun set in? West. So if you walk towards the setting sun, you'll get to a road,
Yep.
right? Like just stuff like that that like is going to be put out there for players, and ultimately like the big thing at this type of event is really understanding that, hey, you know what, like these safety procedures and things that we've thought about, they might not be perfect. We've done, I think myself and Chris have done a really good job at like outlining all the different scenarios and how they're going to play out, and you guys will see that in the rules briefings later on. But like ultimately people need to realize that safety is their own personal safety is their concern, like it's their priority. But the reality is that the next time after we've done the safety briefing, the next time the safety rules or procedures come up, that's a problem and you need to know them because something will have gone wrong,
Yeah, and
right?
like,
And that person could very well be you,
yeah, and
right?
like realistically, this is another of those like, oh yeah, like I took the we talked about this on the podcast. Over the winter, I took the first aid kit off of my kit and put it with the like stuff that's in the safe zone. Okay, no safe zone goes back on my kit,
It goes back in your
right?
kit, absolutely, yeah.
What's living there now? My sidearm. All right, easy math. You know, it's a matter of like this is going to be a different kind of functionality. Like my the little backpack that I use for um, airsoft that I usually just carry like my odds and ends in is not going to be what I'm running for this, right? Like I'm going to need to grab a day pack, which I own a couple of, because um, at a minimum at some point in the day, a pat will probably need to use the woods.
Yeah, use the bathroom,
Yeah,
right? Or eat something
yeah,
or
like
like drink something
food, gonna
or
need
exactly.
hydration bladder, like yeah, it's going to be a really different kind of thing. And like the planning for the like going for a hike for the day piece is very different from the airsoft piece, and it's kind of exciting
Hmm.
in context, like in a way that almost makes me wish that I had like a carbine airsoft rifle available just to like minimize what I'm humping around. But like at the end of the day, I can manage the M27, whatever. If I decide to take the grenade launcher, I take the grenade launcher off. Um, you know, um, and like you said, people are going to be able to chill. Like there's going to be parts of the day where we have, and like, again, not knowing what you guys have on the go, but like I assume functionally that one of the parts of like doing the team lead stuff for this effectively is going to be like, okay, you guys take a kit for 10 minutes,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like,
That's one thing that, like again, combat leadership is, the squad leaders will have to think about that, right? And I think you guys on the PRN side, you're set because you have really strong leadership already. On the ACM side, they don't really have that experience, right? And so that's some things that they're going to have to be coached on a little bit more, right? To be like, hey, remember, you need people to rest, and you can't go hard all day because you're burnout, etc. You still
yeah,
have
well, I
it's
mean,
it's 3 hours into a 10-hour event. If you're already smoked,
yeah, I
we got a
mean,
problem.
crews are TL, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's Karuz your IC and ET's your 2
Yeah.
IC.
So like we've got people who know what they're doing in terms of that aspect of like human resources. Right.
Exactly. So
Um,
I'm really, really excited for you guys to experience that event. And the plan is that if it's successful and it works really well, we want to do the same thing again next year. And next year, we're hoping that we'll get more attendance from different parts of the world.
cool, cool, cool.
We invited the Flamingo guys. They couldn't make it down this year, but they said let us know for next year. And same thing for people like in the US and stuff. I think that they're like Jordan and his crew, like they would be very interested in doing some of this kind of stuff. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out, and hopefully it is very successful, and we get the uptake
Yeah.
to do
And
something
like,
like this again next
at the
year.
end of the day, I will also have tried it. So like if I love it, awesome. If I hate it, at worst you have another pair of hands for next year for the running
Exactly.
it side of things, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is yeah, I hope that as you know, worst cases, that's not too bad, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly right. So I'm thrilled we got a chance to talk and catch up on some of this stuff. I'm looking forward to hearing more about how your prep is going as well over the next couple of weeks
Totally.
and months, surely.
And
And
like
that's something that
I'm
we'll catch up
yeah,
again in the
yeah,
future.
absolutely. And like I'm excited to be doing, like, it's going to be a very different experience, and like that is cool. You know, I'm not um as hardcore about pushing myself physically in some ways as like you are over the last couple of years, definitely. Very around. Yes. Too much pizza? We
Yeah,
have
well,
pizza.
I mean that
Um,
it may be so, but one of
you
our
know,
brains is smoother than the
but
others.
like, you
So
know, but like, you know, I've done enough martial arts for enough time to be able to say that there are definitely versions of I love how this sucks that I'm into.
yeah,
Right.
totally right.
So
Yeah. So hopefully we discover another version of something that sucks that you're into, and if not, like you said, well, I'll always have someone to help me out next time. So,
totally. This has been wicked.
well, guys, yeah, that's all we've got for you this week. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.
Cheers,
Take care.
guys. Have a good week.